Um, do not mute your microphones. I want to hear your. It'd be great if we have this as interactive as possible.
Okay.
It's really annoying when I talk and I don't hear anything back, right? I want to hear stuff like yeah, okay, okay.
Or absolutely not.
Yeah, exactly. What the fuck is that? Stuff like that. Okay.
Can you, are you able to zoom in on your desktop at all? And I just say that because when I was watching the other one, it was really hard to see with the size of the font. Not on the one you have with the white background, but the one with the black background was hard to see in the recording.
Okay, so I'll
I don't know if you can make it bigger or not, but
I can scale stuff off. Let's see. The font. Let's go with big 16 here. Well, does this font look better? So or this one? Oh, this one. 18. You see the highlighted one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good for me.
yeah, I think that's better. Yeah.
Rachel, did it show? Okay. So guys.
Yes, I think that's better. Yes.
So guys,
I agree.
It would be great if you guys can follow up with your code. So does everybody has Patron checked out? Patron backend.
I don't know if I do. Let me look.
Checked out.
Yes, yeah, I do.
The source code. Yeah, great. So it'd be great to follow up. Okay. So guys. Rochelle, unfortunately, I cannot make this left side any bigger. So sorry for that. Hope this helps. So we'll begin the walkthrough from a resource to actually where it gets implemented and how it gets implemented. Okay, and we'll take one resource. Let's say take the me resource here, right? So who's familiar with Grape?
I am now. I wasn't when we started.
Okay, so you're a little familiar with Grape. Rochelle, what's your familiarity?
I am not, but I just follow along, and it's making sense.
Okay. So yeah, like Grape is really easy. It's supposed to be really basic. You have these things that are called Grape API classes, right? And everything is inheriting from the Grape API eventually. So it arrives to inherit from the Grape API. So that's not a big deal, right? And what we're trying to achieve here is make a RESTful API. So basically this is why we have resources, basically, right? So inside our root, you can think of what will mount everything here. And the resource classes are basically your I suppose everybody, Richard and Rochelle, you're familiar with Rails, right? Guys, I said I want this interactive. Don't mute your mics. Okay?
Rails?
With Rails.
Oh, Rails. A little bit, not as much. Mostly more on the Ruby side than the Rails side.
Okay. So yeah, but you know the Rails controllers basically. So the resources this is what they are. They are somehow the Rails controller. What's different with the paradigm, what's the most different part, and I've seen the most confusion between Grape and Rails, is that Rails has these roots directory, right, where you define all the roots or entry points, right? Now Grape doesn't have these. When you mount a resource, it just automatically figures out the route to that resource, basically. So when I mount this resource here, it goes. It will be in this folder, and it goes like, okay, resource me. Okay, so if I write resource me, this means I have a path. I have so far a v1 me path. Rochelle, you see this one, right?
Yes, thank you. That's much better than when it started.
Yeah, exactly. So we have we have a v1 me pad, right? And then when you do get here, for example, which is not absolutely necessary to put get like this, then it's straightforward. It's a get it's a get on this pad, and when you do the put here down here the patch, sorry, down here, then it's the patch on the same pad, right? It can get even more complicated in, for example, if we follow up, let's say, you can mount other resources inside a resource. So inside the messaging API, we have the resource for messaging, okay? So this does the path of v1 messaging, right? And inside it, we mount conversations and messages, right? So this conversation, so when we mount the conversations, this gives us the path of v1 messaging conversations. And then when you do a get sender ID here, and you should actually be put params sender ID. It should be something along these lines here. This will and this should be inside here. This will give us a sender ID here. Something along these lines, right? You want messaging conversation sender ID. So this is how roots get created. So you don't basically have a central folder. When you add a resource, the roots are discovered, and this goes excellent. This concept, the Hatheos concept, right? So hyperlink, hypermedia, blah 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 blah. Okay, the idea is that the API should be discoverable. So if I access if I for example, if I post to v1 users, right, and create a user, and the response should contain the path to the new resource, right? So I can get it. So it should contain a URL, v1 user's ID, for example, the ID of the new user. So let's say 42, right? So it should tell the client, okay, you created a resource and you can get the resource from here. Okay? So this is mostly the concept in Hatheos. Hypermedia is engine of application state, basically. So you can get this from. I'll put it here. Okay. So this is how roots get created. This is how we arrive at our controllers, if you want to call them that, like at our resources, if you want to call them like this. Okay. So we drop the change from here. We drop it. We don't want to change this code just yet. Okay. So okay. So then it's let's take an endpoint. In this case, the user creation endpoint. Okay. So let's see what happens here. We define the resource users, right? So this links us to v1 users, right? Okay. And there was a bunch of stuff here, like the description and the responses, right? The headers. We need the client authorization headers, and as a success, this is the description for the response to it, right? And then we get a bunch of params in here, like what parameters we need for user creation. Do ignore this part. I'll explain it to you later, but just ignore this part. So here where we create the params, we decorate this with OAuth because we basically want to filter, have a authentication in place. So the way to put out the identification, if you watch the first part, I think the first part of my first video recording is that I explain where this OAuth comes from and why we put it here and how it works. And then we have a post, right? We don't need this part where we can keep it just for magic, right? So we have a post on users. So if you look at this resource, you can all this code here. So it's 30 lines of code, basically. Only 2 lines of it are in like actual code that does stuff. So everything that should be in the resource is more like a description of things, right? So it's a bit of documentation, a lot of documentation. Actually, that's all it needs to be in a resource, right? The reason for this, we don't want to implement our business logic here, right? Add here all the stuff that add here all the stuff that the controller should do. If Richard, you said you worked with Rails, you do remember the big Rails controllers that, like, you could look at the user. So if you clone a new Rails application, you could look at 2 things: the user's controller and the user's model. And you will usually like classes with thousands of lines, right? These make any sense, right? So we don't do any here. So what we do here is magically get the user, and then not magically. It's actually not magic at all. But let's say now we get the user, and then we present the user, right? So supposedly we got the user, and we'll get into how we get the user. Now the way we present the user is that we don't just present the user here. Unfortunately, it's a database. It's an active record object, right? So we don't blindly present an active record object to the consumer, right? This doesn't make any sense. We want to filter and show the information relevant for the consumer, right? So this is why we use these entities, and we present these records using these entities, right? So here there's the entities folder come into play. So in this case, we have a mention of the entities here in the success. So the success means these entities, right? And a mention of the entity here, right? And we should also have failure here, description of possible failures, but it's a different topic. Okay, so our presenters are actually web entities, and they basically say, okay, so from the active record model that we got there, we expose the ID, the URL, the email, and stuff like this, and we can do some formatting for these different stuffs, and we can even add some new stuff that we want to present, like in this case the URL, which is not present as an attribute on the model in any way, right? So we can add this stuff here. Just at the presentation level, it doesn't make sense for this to exist anywhere else except the presentation level, the URL. It doesn't make sense to exist in the database, right? So here is where entities come into place, right? Okay, great. So we have our resource description. There's a bunch of stuff here. We know how this gets presented. Well, how do we create a user? Okay. So before going into creating a user, let's rationalize about it. Let's think about it a little. How will we create a user, right? So the first thing that we'll do is that we'll create a user in the database, right? And then we'll update its attributes, more or less, if any of the attributes are, because the only required attributes are email and password, and then we'll send a confirmation email, right? So let's say three easy steps, or two steps, like create a user in the database and send a confirmation email, right? Like the user creation step, it's interesting because we don't simply create the user, we have to add a confirmation token and a confirmation date that actually doesn't come from the parameters in any way, right? So we have to compute this and we have to add it because we will send a confirmation mail at a later time, right? So okay, let's see what happens in this. Let's see what's this class users create base, right? So a use case in this case mimics kind of the behavior of so the path for resources. So you'll have users create and there are base class, right? So that means it's related to the user's resource and the host method here, just to create method for users, right? So users create base, and it says, well, and when you read this, it kind of defines what it does. Look, so we'll create a user, it will update its attributes, and then it will send a confirmation email, right? Straightforward. It's a definition of a workflow, basically. Okay, so we broke it down into manageable, into small pieces of what stuff needs to. So instead of writing all the stuff here, in method,
Okay, makes sense.
yeah, we break it down here. Okay, so let's see what happens in create, right? So in create user, we get the context. The create user actually, it's a use case. Again, it's a use case, right? So what's the base? It's a use case. And use cases basically have the most minimal API ever. They have a before method and a perform method. That's it. They don't have anything else. So that's all their public API. The before method will be called before the perform method.
No way.
Before, right? And then we have this little thing called context. Okay, so the context it's actually the context in which this use case will run. So the context will be shared. In this case, the context will be shared between create user, update attributes, and send confirmation email. So the context will be shared between all these three use cases, right? So it's a way to communicate between them. Okay. So we go in the perform method that you guys called here. So you noticed we called perform on the base, right? So calling perform on the base will actually trigger a perform on create user, a perform on update attributes, a perform on send confirmation, right? Which means, like you notice here, we call the perform as the class method, not the instance method. But the implementation we implement in implementation, these are instance methods. So this means that a new instance of create user gets created, the before instance method gets called, the perform instance method gets called, right? So this is what everything that happens here, and nothing more, nothing less. Okay. So for perform and from the context, we had two parameters. We merged two parameters in the context: the confirmation token and a confirmation token send at. Okay, which is like okay, and we only get this for user creation. These are the only required parameters, right? The email, password, confirmation token, and confirmation token add, and we create the user. Bang, we created it, okay? And we set it on the context, right? So we can set a user, we create a user on the database, and we set it on the context, and that's it. That's what we do so far, right? Nothing fancy, nothing fancy here. So moving next to the next use case. Now here we have a before, right? So here in the before, I just set variables that will be used, instance variables that will be used in the perform method. So this is what I do. So in this case, the update attribute requires a user. So I'll just set the user and get the user from the context, so that I don't have to write stuff like this. Context user update. I prefer to write user update. Right? So I get the full name as equal the type in the picture from the context, the attributes, and you're right, Richard. We should have easily set this up here, right? I read your mind. You're thinking that. Okay, so bam, so that's it. This still works, and we have the attributes. So that's it. Nothing fancy happens here. Again, we updated the attributes from the existing user. And then we go to the same confirmation email, which does the same perform before method, gets the user. And then he uses the user email to send a confirmation email, right? Deliver now, which gets delivered now. So basically that's it. That's all that is required for user creation, and it's clearly written here, right? Now, the good I'll tell you the good part of this implementation, and then I can talk half an hour about the bad parts of it. But the good part of the good
Well,
part.
you only have 9 minutes left.
Yes. The good part of this implementation is that it just decouples any of the stuff that we call a business logic from the presentation layer, which is the delivery, which is the API, right? So we can implement this create base no matter what, no matter how we want it, right? As long and we can vary it as we want it, as long as we use so it will return a user eventually, right? And then the presentation is all big, right? So we don't have to worry, right? The other good part about it is that if we broke it down like this, you notice that you can use use cases from other flows, right? So in this case, in the user create, I use the update attributes from the update flow. Right? So you can take these modular use cases and reuse them classes basically to do some sort of composition here for a workflow, right? And the cool part about it is other cool part about it is because they do only one thing, they can be easily tested into isolation, right? So in this case, you remember I updated the attributes here, right? I refactored this class, so I can run the tests. Make sure
Just for that.
Make sure that Postgres is started. Okay. So I can run this test. Make sure I didn't break anything. I actually didn't break any stuff because database configuration. No such config database. What? What happened to my database config? Yeah. Anyway, I'll be playing. I'm sorry. I played around with branches a lot. I've been reviewing Nico's implementation, and what happened to my database config? That's weird. And I lost my database config. Looks like in the process. So yeah, sorry about that. But the idea is really simple. We can test everything about update attributes, right? In isolation, okay? So we can test that you will update full name, you will update zip code, you will update picture, and when the user is a creative type of type create, what happens, right? You will update the type, right? So it creates a new creative. Will not so when the attributes are missing, basically we check that it does a patch. It doesn't actually. So if I have a user that already has a zip code and I only update the full name, I don't want the zip code. I don't want the zip code to get removed. Okay. So we can test all this stuff related to updating really in independence, and in the resource we just only test integration, right? More or less integration stuff. So like, okay, when it's valid, when we have valid parameters, the response body will contain everything. Will contain email, URL, and type. Some of the stuff that we want to have, right? So more or less this is a divide and conquer kind of approach, right? Just break it down to small pieces, as small as possible. It can be tested in isolation. Can be tested in isolation, because for update attribute specs, basically, you can inject everything you can inject anything you want in the context, right? So I'll put everything that I want in the context, so I can make my tests. I can test my use cases, everything, right? Okay, so that's in a nutshell. This is the approach that we're currently taking, and there are a couple of examples here. So that you have the booking, you have me, you have all basically with Facebook, and you have users. Just check out various ways of using use cases for various endpoints, right? So there are plenty of examples. Now, what's the bad part about it? There are plenty of bad parts about it, right? So the first one is that we basically our business logic talks directly to Active Record. It doesn't have a business object. It doesn't have a domain object. So the domain object, in this case, the user, it's an Active Record model, which is inherently bad because we linked ourselves to. We created ourselves a dependency on the Active Record and the database, right? So now, if we vary the database implementation, we need to vary our business implementation, our business logic and implementation inside our business logic, which kind of sucks, right? We shouldn't vary this. We should separate, segregate them, use a user repository, for example, to save it. Okay, but because the Active Record is the Active Record pattern is so far-reaching, so that's something. That's definitely something. The second thing that's bad about it is that it can get pretty. At some point, if we try to reuse use cases too much, we can get into the trap of making use cases too generic and not focus them too much, and they'll become really harder to understand and harder to maintain and to read. And there are a couple of other level of abstractions that are missing here and are clearly defined. Also, like validation. Where does validation happens? Right, validation happens right now. It's not clear. It should be clear in my mind, it should have been clear here, right? I should have a step of validate something, right? And then create a user, and then update the attributes, and then send the confirmation email, right? So, and probably, anyway. So that.
But we do have validation. It just takes place somewhere else.
Exactly. So we do have validation, but it's not obvious because it takes place in the user model, which again sucks, but is the nature of Active Record, right? So Active Record can add you some validation stuff here, which again sucks, right? And in my opinion, this is a bad approach because we tighten our validation rules, which are business rules, to a model in the database again, a kind of a active record model, which is a mapping of a table in the database, which sucks, right? So that's no good. So that's bad. But the reason I started off with this implementation was that, well, it offered the people that were currently at that moment working at the project, which the only one now it's Nikos, a easy way not to do too much of a mess, right? Not to write too much of a business logic inside the resources or somewhere inside the resources, and try to decouple at least the presentation layer, right? The presentation, the delivery and presentation, which is the delivery is the resources, the Grape API, and the presentation is the entities here, the Grape entities. Try to decouple at least those initially, right? And put however do they want the logic in the use cases. For the use cases, I chose this minimum API, as I showed you, that only has minimum framework. That only has two methods only. Basically, it has before and perform. So yeah, in a nutshell, this is the current approach with its benefits and shortcomings explained. So before you go ahead and ask me questions, Nikos has Nikos is working on a better approach. Better depending, not better. Let's say, well, actually, it's better, but I'm not sure if we can apply it. I'm not convinced that we can apply it at this time. Although I'm making great efforts on getting this in shape, getting his approach in shape to be implemented, right? So you should definitely check it out and how proposed stuff gets decoupled, and it's basically a better approach to this, decoupling all the things and then implementing. But the bad part about it is that it's nowhere to be found here at this moment in the existing endpoints, and there is still some work to be done on it. So that's so we have basically a choice of a thing that we have, and it works, and then we understand its goodness and its shortcomings, and implementation that's still work in progress. And
well, at this point, when do we decide that it's beneficial to finish and refactor versus overhaul?
So yeah, that's a good point. Right now, what we want to decide is that in what we do with the existing pull requests and how do we move forward, right? So by Monday, you guys will choose a way to, everybody actually in the team will choose a way to move forward. If we choose a way to move forward with Nikos, if somehow Nikos manages to finish his architecture approach by Monday, and we choose a way to move forward with it, then we'll have to rewrite this, price of paying to rewrite this. But if we get it right, it shouldn't be a big price to pay, actually, because if everything is separated into use cases, and basically all we have to do is replace the calls from the resources. Theoretically, this part shouldn't change at all, right? This part will be basically copying and pasting to a new structure. So it's not a big deal, but we have to understand it, and somebody has to do it, and we have to follow that pattern. Well, or we can continue with this pattern and choose it over for its familiarity.
Okay.
So we can be more productive. Basically, try not to go too hard against the framework. basically. This was my approach initially, because the team initially was composed of people that were familiar with Rails, but this is not the case anymore. So Rails familiarity is me and you, Richard. Rochelle and Nikos and Luke have no Rails familiarity. So for them, this approach doesn't sound. I mean, it's not. It's nothing that's attractive.
They're familiar with. Yeah. No, I get it.
It's nothing that's familiar with. So yeah.
Can I restate or clarify a question? Is the question not the transitional costs of shifting the current base year into the Nikos architecture plan, but rather and how much time that would take, but rather what the sort of ongoing costs of tackling new challenges with that strategy, and not having a really clear understanding of how things are tackled.
Yeah, exactly. That's my problem. Because this, in my mind, that's the problem. Nikos' approach is a sane approach, but it goes against the framework. So in my opinion, we should drop the framework. We should not fight it. If we don't use it, just drop it. Okay, don't use Active Record because it's there and you just hack it around, right? Just drop it. There are better solutions than Active Record, and I agree with that. SQL is a way better fit in his architecture proposal, and from my experience in all the projects, the Ruby-related projects that deal with databases, right? So Rails doesn't work. Just drop it. Don't use it. Why do we have to have structured this stuff? It's ridiculous. It's weird that we have to have a folder controllers, and high controllers have API, which basically has entities and helpers and types have nothing to do with a controller, right? They are put there for the unfortunate reason that Rails does know how to load controllers, right? Automatically load controllers. So we don't have to write a lot of requires on top of each file. So that's the only reason I put it, right? But because what he proposes is not finished and is not battle tested in any way. So nobody actually used it in production. We will face a lot of challenges, unknown challenges in our work, right? And we will have nowhere to seek answers to, right? We have no community behind us to help us, or we have no we have the Ruby community to help us basically. Yeah, so that's my only problem with that's like the biggest problem actually that I have. The rest of the problems are in the comments that I put there, but are more technical problems. Okay? So before we dig into messages and just some stuff related to messages, my biggest concerns related to messages actually. Any acts you should be around, by the way, on messaging stuff.
Sure.
Rochelle and Richard, any questions on the stuff that I showed you?
No, it clarified a lot. I didn't actually understand the structure for the use cases, so that's where my confusion was. But it's not hard. I just needed a little bit of an instruction to show what the hell was going on. So it's not that difficult.
Rochelle, how does this look for you?
I agree. I agree. I was wondering how those fit in, and so that makes sense to me as well.
Okay, so guys, what I propose you do next, like not for Richard, but for Rochelle. Rochelle, what's your feature? What are you working on?
It's the notifications through email and SMS.
Ah, great.
Connected to the profile. Yeah.
So notifications through email. So a user is supposed to get a notification whenever something happens on his profile, or what?
Yeah, he gets a booking request. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, there's a variety. There's like 6 or 8 different ones, like someone follows you or you get a payment or a booking request. There's a couple different ones.
Okay. And you want to create, there shouldn't be an endpoint on the API for this, actually. Right? We don't expose a notification endpoint. Okay. So exactly you're working on some sort of a service here that we can integrate or something.
Right, that would make sense.
Okay. Now, this is not a, there's not a lot of stuff that you can apply from this part, because the service will be self-contained and so on, and can be injected in a use case or whatever approach we want to take. So I'll suggest trying to work on an actual endpoint. So let's say on the booking request endpoint, right? So just to prove, work on a booking request from the API, starting from Grape, from the API or wherever you want, to actually creating a booking request and sending a notification to it. This way, you can get a feeling of how stuff it's done currently, right? What do you think? Will this?
Yes. I like it.
Okay. So yeah. So you do that, and yeah, and ask me at any given time about stuff, right? Don't try to actually implement it too much of it or make it perfect. Just try to walk through each of these layers and see if you tie stuff. Like if you just return mock data all the way, it will be great. But just get a feeling on how actual things are tied, linked together, and how they work, right? See the thing there. See the API endpoint in your Swagger documentation, right? You should see a let's say booking, I don't know, or a booking request or something. API here endpoint. Okay.
Okay.
Fantastic. So yeah, do that and ask me questions at any given time, right? And talk to Nikos, of course. That's to hear, to see. Well, look in the backend for his pull request, and he will probably want to talk to you to see an alternative approach to what would exist in the project, and consider for yourself if you're willing to go with that, or and pay the price of switching over, just if that's beneficial, if basically. Okay, so that's a lot of stuff to do, Rachel. But it's now or never, because
Right.
Because if you don't express an opinion on this, an opinion will be formed by Monday, and you will have to follow along with the decision that was taken and you didn't get the chance to be part of, right?
Yeah. And I think it's
Okay.
really important that you weigh in, Rochelle, too.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. That's anything else, guys, related exactly to this part?
Yeah.
No? Okay.
Awesome.
So now let's talk about messaging. There are two things here.
Should we let Rochelle go, or
Rochelle, if you want to stick in, it's an interesting talk about an endpoint, and if you don't have the time, it's not mandatory.
This is for messaging, right? Messages?
Messaging. Yeah, for messages.
Okay. I probably will just listen. I'm going to probably do some other things. I'm going to listen because if I hear something that, then I'm going to. Sorry, any other look at the code is helpful to me.
Fantastic. Okay. Stick around.
All right, thanks.
Yeah,
Thanks.
no problem. Okay. So, I have two problems with this pull request. Well, we like with the pull request. And I don't have problems, Richard. I'm just two observations basically. They are
Solutions.
more concerning to me. Yeah, those two solutions, right? So the first one is, and the biggest one is the creation of messages. Oh, but I have no, because I have no database, right? So in the creation of messages, you said a recipient ID and a sender ID, right? Which to me is bad because it implies that basically anybody can send a message from any sender to any recipient, right? So the approach that I would think about here is this, right? Only an authenticated user can send a message, and he will always send the message from himself, right? There's no need for a sender ID, right? The client shouldn't pass a sender ID. It should pass it should authenticate the user, and then when the user gets authenticated, then it sends the message from himself, which makes sense, right? So right here, instead of having a sender ID, you have current user ID, right? That's straightforward, and it does make sense, right?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, great. Okay, so that's one thing. The other thing is the creation of conversations, which I find. Oh, but you removed it. You removed it? You removed it. Okay, great. So then we're good. Okay, we're not good because some other stuff popped up in my mind. Okay, so the creation of conversation didn't make any sense, and yeah, a conversation will automatically be created when the message gets sent, right? Which we abstract this away. So now we're left with only this get conversation, right? Get conversation with the sender ID. Yeah, okay, will be current user. You mentioned this. Okay, so yeah, so we get a conversation, right? So now the only thing that sticks out for this, because except for the modules and the way this part is implemented, the only interesting part that I want to talk to you about is that JSON thingy. Can you explain to me what that?
So that's in the helper. The JSON thingy is a
user previews. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a preview on, instead of like attaching the entire user object or the conversation object or some other object to the conversation, it was just sending it like basic information of who is involved with the conversation. So as opposed to just saying the ID and then the front end would have to do a call, I was just attaching some basic information like a name and something else.
Okay. Okay, so that's the way, like everything here gets translated into JSON, right? Into a JSON response. So you can choose to expose let's say a preview, or let's say something like this, a preview using another entity, right? A preview entity.
Okay. And then
so you need to create a preview entity, and the preview entity will contain preview entity. Woohoo! Right? So blah 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 modules, and it goes preview entity, and right here you can expose stuff, right?
Gotcha. Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
So let's say we expose the name. Where do we get the name from? So we can get the name from user.name, right? So let's say, so the presentation here is not linked. I mean, it's linked, but it doesn't have to reflect the database record one-to-one. And actually, I actually encourage you not to reflect the database record. So let's say instead of in the messages here, when you present, in conversations, when you present a conversation, instead of actually sending a conversation, instead of with, you can also send along a user record. So let me grab it. Show the syntax exactly for its scrape entity. Okay. So first say as okay, so you see this is the nested part, right? Nested exposure. You can expose see phone and address. You can expose the address using another entity inside an entity, right?
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, and you can also let's see, pass in a where is it? Option. How do you pass in options?
Instead of options hash up there.
Yeah. Oh, right. So you pass in options like, okay, you pass in options like type, okay. So I can pass in here, let's say I pass in here user like user, okay, and then inside my preview entity I can access options user, let's say. Well, no, that sucks. Well, there's not a, yeah, I can do it like this. But this is not a way. It's not a very good way to do it. But I can do it like expose user actually using preview entity, right? And you just pick up stuff from user on preview. Like, okay, let's say it only picks up the name, right? Like this, and that will work. So there's definitely something that we don't need to keep in the database. We can compose these. We can compose these entities
without actually persisting it. Okay.
Without actually persisting it. Yeah, that's right. So, okay. So that here's the three things that I wanted to do with it. So
what happens when I have two users that I'm exposing? Do I just do that?
That's an interesting slide. Like say,
can I save that like how I expose it as like a like JSON, and then that JSON is holding, or like an array that's holding two exposed entities?
Well, it will be like, I will group them in a model actually, but I think you already have the model. It's the conversation model. The conversation model has the conversation. Yeah, so you can have multiple users inside the conversation, right? So you can expose those users actually, because they'll be because right here this is the conversation, right? And you can expose users. Where is it? Conversation. Right, users. Here. So yeah, you can go ahead and expose users using preview entity, and basically the preview entity, which is very badly named, it will expose the name of each user basically. So the JSON response will look something like, okay, so they say, I don't know what ID. The conversation has ID 42. It will have users like this, and inside we'll have
two names.
Yeah, John and name. John. Okay. This is what we'll get. This is what this will get you, right? So this was actually the JSON that you stored in the database or something along these lines. I'm not sure what the JSON was, right? But like this one, this is what it is, right?
Makes sense.
Okay. But the idea is, if you want to expose multiple things here, you ought to pass them the selection, right? I know. Option 2, if there are options, or you group them in a model, right? And it doesn't have to be an active record model. It can be any model, right? Because it doesn't for ADT, it doesn't care if it receives an active record model or an object. It cares that the duck that it receives, it fucks to users and URL ID, right? To make an analogy with duck typing, right?
Duck typing, yeah.
Exactly. Okay.
Yeah, makes sense to me.
Great stuff, man. So what's my request to you? Actually, is like leave this stuff, because this stuff it's like you can implement it at a later time or anyway anything. You need to update the talk to Stan. And I understood this pull request for the front wasn't merged just yet, and it's a very easy update here to take in place, right? So, but what I need you to do is try to implement this stuff with in the use cases, right? In the architecture, in the architecture, right? You can hardly call it an architecture, but in the way it's implemented right now in the query, right? See how this feels for you. See if that works for you, right? And then take a look at Nikos or talk to Nikos and see how his approach feels to you and works for you, right? How he will work for you, right? And then decide on which way to go, right? Because there will be a more or less a voting on Monday, and as I said to Rachel, if you don't decide a way, it will be chosen for you, and that will suck because you'll have to do it. You'll have to do it that way, and maybe you don't want it. Okay.
The more informed people weigh in, the better decision we get in the long run.
Exactly. So this is why this was the point of my. Nikos put it great. We're not in a competition here. I'm not trying to tell you guys this is the right way to do it, right? I'm trying to explain to you guys, right, what's the way this currently be doing. So what's happening currently in the API, how we currently implement it, what are the benefits, what are the shortfalls of it, right? You should definitely check out an alternative to these, right? But to get a feeling for it, you need to write into it, right? I wrote Nikos way. I started implementing stuff from user creation, for example, using Nikos architecture, right? And this is where most of my comments came from, right? And I was writing stuff appeared, and it was looking weird to me, right? And this is why I commented on it, right? So as you will write it in this way, you'll have questions, and then you will ask me, and I will answer, and then based on that answers, you can decide like, okay, this approach sucks or this approach works for me, right?
Perfect, yeah. And so like I had some pretty meaty stuff going on inside the helpers for database queries. Should I put those in use cases as well and try to format like that?
Yeah. So basically, helpers should be for sharing stuff between different. So here is an example of a helper. So this is in my mind a helper. The user parent helpers, right? So in your when you create a user, you have these params. Email, password, full name, zip code. Interesting picture, right? When you update a user, you have, say params. Okay? So there are a lot of like
Shared entities.
shared params, right? So this calls for a helper, right? I need to share these params, and this is the params that I need to share, right? And I share them between the two instances. So I create a helper, and I say, okay, I share the full name, vehicle type, interesting picture between them. And the way I share it is that I include this helper in my me class, and I say use update, which is a poor name for it, right? Update is parent. Yeah, I just said okay, update here because actually creation only requires these two parameters, right? But it also has the update parameters in the signature, right? So this is a way of using modules in my mind, sharing common stuff between resources, right? But this module, again, it's specific to the delivery layer, right? So I don't put any business related stuff, right? Any of the logic of creating a user in here, and I share it between, or updating, right? The way I share this, the update of the parameters was I used this use case, the update attributes, the way I shared it, right? In user creation. So which was a class on its own, right? A class that was having a perform action, and it was you could do it from, and then I kind of composed it here over, right?
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, that makes sense. My confusion was I just didn't know what the hell was going on and how it worked. So it was hard for me to wrap my head around any concept that wasn't really Rails. And I mean, my helpers were probably a little out of scope, but I didn't know how else to do it in this setup. So.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So here is an alternative, right? And I'm very sorry I didn't figure this out sooner. But actually, this is not excuse in any way. But I actually had this talk previously, and it was recorded when I came up with this. But there were other developers in the back. So as the turn is pretty bad. Was pretty bad previously.
Yeah.
And I think I keep saying this stuff, and it just later occurred to me that you're a new one, and you didn't look over this stuff, right?
No.
So I'm sorry. It's totally definitely my fault, and Act's fault because I didn't share this stuff with you guys. but we're getting to it now. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think that.
So let me give you the bad news now. The stuff is that we will have a decision by Monday. So anything that you can do by Monday.
I have literally 12 hours of commuting time tomorrow. So as long as my laptop is awake, I will be working right. So.
Great.
There's a good chance that I'll have this completely refactored by tomorrow, or if not, I'll have it done tomorrow. But I'll take a peek at Nico's stuff and see what he's got going on, and see how I feel about that, and see if it makes sense for us to move in that direction.
Yeah, exactly.
And with 12 hours, I can probably refactor with 2 different branches and see how they both look. So.
Yeah, exactly. Because there's the like, okay. So you will have to refactor in 2 ways, definitely, at least in 2 ways, right? Maybe you come up with the third way.
I mean, I already know a third way, and it's called Rails.
Exactly. So, but it's a little too late in the game for that. But I think if you make a very convincing use case, I'm not talking about that. If you make a very convincing statement, and you have us on board by Monday, then
okay.
Yeah, okay for everybody. So the idea is we need a decision on Monday. the way to move forward, right? It will be a decision to move forward. Everybody will adhere to it if it wants its pull requests and stuff to be merged, right? Unless that doesn't mean that definitely no improvements will be made ever, but it will be made in pull requests, right? So when an improvement gets made, it will be made overall, right? So if everybody wants to say, okay, from now on we're using repositories, you will have to strip out all active records and replace repositories all over the place in a big pull request. Okay, so or stuff like that.
Sounds good.
Okay, fantastic, Richard. Richard, I'm not sure who else is in the call anymore. Rochelle.
Yeah. And Rochelle.
Yeah, I had.
Just listening.
Yeah, I had. It was great talking to you guys. I'm looking forward to your opinion on weighing in on this on Monday, right?
That's good. Yeah, I'll have my opinion, I'm sure.
Great, guys, great. Have a fantastic and productive rest of weekend. If you don't have any other questions.
I think I'm good for now. I've got the direction, so I know now what I need to be doing.
Great talk, Lee.
Yeah, it was good. Thank you.
Cheers. Yeah.
Enjoy your weekend. Yeah.
Take care.
All right. Take care.
You do, guys. Bye.
Cheers.
Bye.